And at 6:01 p.m., I'm going to call to order the virtual monthly village board meeting for the Village of Sister Bay on Tuesday, October 18th, 2022. Roll call, Zashki here.
Berto here.
Baker
Al here.
Cox here.
Okay, we have a quorum. For those of you who would like to join us, we will rise and on the count of three, recite the Pledge of Allegiance. 1, 2, 3. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. I will motion that we approve the amended agenda as published.
I'll
And-
second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. I will motion that we approve the meeting minutes from the September 20th, 2022 regular village board meeting, the September 20th special village board meeting, and the October 4th special village board meeting.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Abstain because I wasn't at two of them.
Okay. Motion carried with one abstention. Agenda item number 6. Do we have any comments or concerns from the public that's joining us this evening on a non-agenda item? Okay, we will move right along to correspondence. Heidi, is there anything of merit you want to summarize for us regarding correspondence?
There were just the 3 items in the packet. One letter from Donna Johnson regarding noise in the village. Thank you from the League of Women Voters who set up a booth during Marina Fest and wanted to express their appreciation for us allowing them to be there. And then a question from Jean Sundstrom regarding the Zoom format for meetings.
Okay. Thank you. Item number 7, County Supervisor Report from Dave Lenow. Is Dave with us this evening? There. Hi, Dave.
Hello, good evening from a windy and cool evening to everyone.
Hi, Dave.
At our admin meeting today at the county level, we're required to do a public hearing for our transportation system every year if there are any changes. And that was held today for the elderly disabled transportation plan. There are no major changes to be done this year. It's going to continue to run pretty much the same schedule, same type of offering as it has in the past. Just an update, as of September 30th, they've done just over 50,000 rides for the year so far. And they expect to get probably somewhere around the 70 to 75,000 rides by the end of the year. So that continues to chug right along. The other thing we approved today was the stray and impound animal shelter services agreement with the Wisconsin Humane Society for the next 3-year period of time, 2023 through 2025. We also went through, as everybody is this time of the year, going through all of the changes and benefits and recommendations for health insurance. The county is self-insured. So we have a couple of consultants that act as our intermediaries as they go through claims and stuff. But we are going to make some health insurance changes. The dollar amount for employees is going to go up slightly. Some additional benefit changes are also going to occur, although they're fairly minor. But we had to approve the design for the 3 types of healthcare plans that we have, the health insurance premiums. We also are changing our wellness incentive program this year, continuing with our Delta, and we also changed our stop loss carrier. I don't know if you're familiar with the county plan, but basically the long and the short of it is it's self-insured. An employee is covered up to $95,000 directly of expenses, medical expenses directly by the county. Once it exceeds 95,000, anything above that is reimbursed to the county through a stop loss insurance carrier. And this year, the carrier that was currently in place asked for a 24 percentage point plus increase this year. And so we changed carriers. We were able to find a carrier that increased about 5%. So as with everything else, costs continue to go up. Our budget, I know you're doing your budget tonight. The county budget meeting is set for November 15th. If anybody has any interest or wants to attend or ask any questions. And that's pretty much it for the day, unless you have some questions of me.
I have nothing.
Thanks for the update, Dave. Much appreciated.
All right, thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
too. Stay anchored.
Agenda item 8, the budget hearing. Julie, do we need a motion and a sec? Do we need a motion to go to public hearing, or can we just declare it?
You can just declare it.
Okay, so our agenda item 8 is a public hearing on the proposed 2023 budget for the Village of Sister Bay. So at 6:07 p.m., I will officially open the public hearing on the proposed 2023 budget for the Village of Sister Bay. Do we have any public commentary? Hearing none, at 6:07 p.m., I will close the public hearing. And I will move us along to agenda item 8A, starting on page 17 in our packets, the general review of the budget and budget policies. Are there any questions that our trustees may have for Tasha or Julie? Denise?
On page 21, item 13, and I know that we had talked about this at Finance and Personnel, that we were going to start working towards a step system for each position. But we don't know what that step system is yet. And my second question is we did not discuss in when that step system is proposed, is there a maximum wage for any particular or position, or will there be a maximum wage for all positions?
So I can address that. As far as the maximum wage goes, what it does is it doesn't give you a range every year. It just says on this year, this is what you're paid. On year 2, this is what you're paid. And it goes up to, let's say, 5 years. Usually some decisions we have to make is, do you go 5 years or 7 years before you hit longevity pay? So let's say it's 5 years, because we have pretty good turnover sometimes. So you'd get a raise every year for 5 years. And then at that year, you would then hit longevity pay, which is at a different rate. And that has to be established yet too when we talk about the STEP program. But right now what we did, and for those that aren't familiar, you know, when we were looking at wages, we set basically a starting wage to make sure we were in line with our comparables. So that now becomes like the first step of our STEP system. So Tasha and I have agreed that if and when the budget is adopted, that we'll actually start hammering out what that STEP system looks like, and then bring it back to the Personnel and Finance Committee. I'm not sure what the other question was, Denise, or if that answered your question.
That answers my question. It was about, you know, any particular position, if you start earning X, that's the max that anyone will ever get in that position. So you're talking about longevity, and that's at a different rate, but there's not necessarily really a max pay scale. And I guess we can just talk about that at Finance. This year, also what was presented from staff at our joint Personnel and Finance meetings And we did something different than what staff had suggested, which was a COLA and pay increases. And on the page 21, still on number 13, it says the COLA will not be less than 0. Does that mean it can be 0?
I would think so. If you have a negative, if you have a negative CPI, that's the possibility. That was unchanged from the previous policy.
Right, right. And because we didn't incorporate a COLA at all this year, I just wanted to make sure that because the COLA now is going to be a guideline moving forward, not a guarantee. Personnel and finance will deal with that every year. So I just, because now it's going to be a guideline, not a given, I just wanted to make sure that those words meant what the direction was of personnel and finance.
That's correct. That's my understanding. There was no COLA this year, and that the discussion was it should not be a guaranteed cost of living raise, and that language reflects that.
Okay, all right. I was just double checking. Thank you. Those were my questions.
Any other questions on the budget itself? I have one thing to note on the draft resolution that we move to next, item 8B, the draft resolution adopting the 2023 budget.
What page is that on, Rob?
It's on page 101. The first sentence has a spelling issue that needs to be corrected. First sentence currently reads, whereas the Finance Committee of the Village of Sister Bay has review, that should be has reviewed, past tense.
Yep.
With that being noted and the correction to be made, is there any other questions from trustees or discussion on the draft of the resolution to adopt the budget? Hearing none, then we should be able to move along with adopting this formally at the November meeting, correct, Julie?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Tasha, thank you very much, as
Thank you
always,
for all your
for your
work.
excellent work. And Julie, thank you for your excellent work along with Heidi on all of the rigors of producing the budget for this year.
That was Tasha. She did a good job.
Thank you.
Moving along to ordinances this evening, agenda item number 9A, ordinance number 302, amended chapter 66, the Parks District regulations concerning open space calculations. We have a recommendation from staff to adopt this resolution as proposed on page 103 and 104 and 105 in our packets. Do we have any questions for Julie on this ordinance proposal?
I have none.
Okay,
None.
I will motion that we accept staff's recommendation and adopt the amendment to chapter 26 of ordinance number 302 as proposed by staff in the packet.
Chapter 66,
Right.
Yeah.
What did I say, Denise?
26.
Oh, excuse me. Yep, chapter 66, ordinance number 302.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Ordinance number 9B, ordinance number 296, amended chapter 66, the general business district and associated amendments to allow mobile food vendors. This begins on page 106 of our packets. Any discussion? I will just clarify for my fellow trustees, I'm voting no on this ordinance as I have voted no all along because I do not think the food court situation is in the best interest of the village. It's been my opinion since the beginning of these discussions at committee level that letting a business where a food court fits in a particularly approved zoning district to just let it be worked out between the business and the food truck vendor. That being said, have been virtually the only one all along feeling that way, but to clarify for trustees, that's why I will vote no on this.
Can you explain that a little bit more, Rob? That I don't know.
Yes. So what essentially has driven the revision of this has been the development of a idea that would come be enacted to, in essence, not allow a single food truck to operate on a particular business in a particular zone, but to require the existence of a food truck court. And there has been discussion at the various committee levels on this. Points that I raised were, we have very strict regimens and rules preventing Burger King from coming in and taking over the Shopko facility and putting in a Burger King. But in essence, a developer or an entrepreneur could start a food court on that, buy that property, start a food court there, and have all the national chains that operate in current food truck associations nationwide, such as Nathan's Hot Dogs out of New York, Home Run Inn Pizza out of Chicago, et cetera, could be populating the food court with national brands. And in fact, Wisconsin has recently developed several Wisconsin/regional food truck associations trying to get businesses to develop relationships with these national brands and bring them in. The other thing is, in my opinion, if you read through all of the designations and descriptions of what this food court would be, it is certainly possible that if an entrepreneur would be taking over this development of a food court, it would also include a standalone congregational area where you might have an arcade, you'd have a gift shop, you'd have all kinds of other things going on, which I'm not in general opposed to, but I found it peculiar from the beginning when people in support of this used the lingo that this would be a tourist destination, and that the allure of the food court and that the relevance of the food court would be that it would be a tourist destination. And in my opinion, I think we all have shared the experience or experiences of witnessing our fellow citizens, not just tourists, but our fellow citizens, our fellow residents, with a spirit of community participating in going to a single food truck that's been at a single business. And clearly, the majority of sentiment from Plan Commission forward was that making this food court a potential tourist destination would be good for the village. Personally, I disagree with that. In my opinion, we had a pretty good thing going in terms of, if somebody wanted to have a food court in a certain area and it can be worked out, I would have been in favor of refining it in that direction. But be that as it may, as I said, and as Denise could confirm for you, and Nate as well, I believe, that I was pretty much the lone voice of that throughout the Plan Commission hearings with my sentiments. But I feel, I owe my fellow trustees who are not privy to those meetings an explanation as to why I'll be voting no on that. Any other, Denise?
Rob is correct with his reasoning, but my interpretation of the code as it's written is much different than Rob's. If someone wanted to come into the village, purchase some property, put in all the amenities that would be required, bathrooms, a driveway, a parking lot, etc., that could house multiple food trucks, that obviously is one option. But just because we call it a food court, if there's a current business in the village, in the B1 district, that already meets the criteria and has room,
Mhm.
they can also have someone on their property, depending upon their space. They could have one, they could have four. It all depends on how much property they have and them meeting the guidelines that we have laid forward. So my interpretation is it allows for both.
So would it be, I mean, would it be out of line if your interpretation allows for that and Rob's interpretation suggests something else? And aside from it just being opinions, if it's interpretation of the way the policy is written, I mean, look, I know we've gotten this far with it. Do we still have work to do? I mean, should it be so that it's not interpreted in different ways among us as trustees, but that it's understood very clearly by all of us as trustees? So it's written in a certain way that can be either agreed to or not agreed to. But I just, if we let opinion get in the way, sometimes also that's not going to be a great policy. The policy ought to
Julie
be
can
able to
tell
breathe on
us, Julie can give us her interpretation, who would be addressing this issue.
Right, so I'm the one who has to enforce the code, and I helped draft this, did quite a bit of work on it. In my mind, it's a pretty black and white code. Right now, the way the code is interpreted is if you have a food truck or you want to have a food truck on your property, we would say no. We do not allow food trucks. Our interpretation has been to not allow food trucks on private property. This text amendment would allow a food truck or more on private property, provided they did certain things like made sure there was room for parked cars, made sure there were restrooms available, things of that nature. To me, it's a pretty clear, easily enforceable code, the way it's written.
Mhm.
And Rob's right, you know, some people said, well, this would be good for drawing tourism. If you look at the preamble to the ordinance, though, it's really about keeping up with trends and making sure that we are providing affordable food choices for people, whether they live here or visit here. And the thought was flat out prohibiting them maybe isn't in our best interest, because the trends are people want them and people want them on their property and people want affordable food choices. So by at least allowing them in the village, we felt that we were giving people those options.
Has the policy been written in a way where it's going to be difficult to allow them in the village? If you're a food truck provider, is it going to be, are there parts of this policy that quite frankly make it so difficult that they're prohibited anyway?
You know, that's interesting, Don. I am sure there are people who would say that is a terrible policy, it's not going to let me do it, but I don't think so. It's pretty clear. You need X amount of land, you need parking, you need a bathroom.
And those businesses
That's
exist
about
in B1? Those businesses exist in B1 that have all of those parameters, the paved, you know, enough square feet paved. I mean, that could then partner with a food truck. I mean, if you're thinking about our village, are there likely partnerships in places that the food truck providers could reach out to?
Yeah, there are properties that they could, and there are properties big enough that could be developed to do it. So you have two options. You could either work with somebody who already has that space and infrastructure, or you could develop your own.
The-
So I,
the other
so I
thing,
guess
just
that's, sorry, Rob.
Sorry, Don. No, I thought you were finished. Go ahead, Don. You have the floor.
So it puts us, it kind of puts, I guess to your point, it puts us in an awkward position a little bit on a vote, because if we desire to have an opportunity to have food trucks in the village, but we vote yes for this, we might quite frankly be making it difficult for that to occur. If we vote no on the policy, then we vote no to have food trucks, quite frankly, when we really might want to. So that's, I guess, the difficulty of this particular vote and policy.
And the other thing that I would mention is that at the plan commission level, when we did discuss the reality that national branded food trucks representing national restaurant chains or food chains could monopolize or dominate such a court, there was discussion at the plan commission level that I recall that the ordinance could be written in a way so that the wording was similar to the wording that is used now that prevents Burger King from coming in and putting in a Burger King restaurant. I don't see that in what's before us this evening on pages 106 to 110. If Julie knows it's in there and can reference it, that would be great. But to my recollection, it was brought up, and I believe, Denise, it was you who brought up saying, that we could tweak the verbiage so that it read similar to the wording. And I don't think you quoted verbatim reading something. I think you were quoting from memory to the degree of the type of wording that, prevents a standalone restaurant chain from coming in. And from other documentation, and I don't see that represented in here. And I mentioned that, Don, because in essence, that's part of, the question, that's part of the answer to the question you raised, which is, quite possibly, the way this is written now, a food court could develop, quickly fill up, and if there was a local food vendor from the community that wanted in there, they could be aced out.
So, Denise, go ahead.
Pertaining to something that Don had said, voting yes means this, voting no means that. I think you're struggling to wrap your head around this so that you feel comfortable making the correct vote. Just like any other business that operates within the village, they have to follow the zoning code. There are things that you can do and that you cannot do, and you have to meet that criteria. And so, yes, I agree with Julie that there are some that would say that it is just too restrictive, but we kept it to what truly was important: parking, bathrooms, enough space, no overcrowding, things of that nature.
I just want to clarify one other thing too. Julie made a point a moment ago saying that, in referencing my point, she said that, when I recollected how this was initially discussed as a potential tourist destination, and Julie said, referenced that I had said it would be good for tourism. My position on it is, while it may well be good for tourism, is that it in my opinion, the fact that this either would possibly prevent or make it very difficult for local participation in what could become a national chain food court, that takes a step a lot closer to tourist destination than something local for the community. And I just, in my opinion, this is one of those areas where, I feel strongly that, the community could be better served than in that, but Denise?
So would it be appropriate then that to not allow the formula businesses, and that's what they're called, into the food courts, that we send it back to Plan Commission so that they may address it? Heidi, I can't remember. You and I were working on a formula business ordinance. Did we ever finish that, or is that still hanging out there?
No, it's still sitting out there. Unfortunately, we never got back to it.
Okay.
And that's one of the comments I was gonna make is there was a little discussion about the formula businesses, the chain restaurants. There wasn't a lot of conversation, because everybody quickly remembered that we don't have anything right now that prohibits them in the village. People think we do, there's some discussion on that, but we don't have anything on the books to say you can't have that right now. To answer or to respond to Denise's comment, so yes, if that is something we want to address in this code, we do not change it at the board level. It's going to have to be referred back to the Plan Commission to make that change.
I think that would be a very good idea, and that would allow the Plan Commission to discuss how it could be worded to, allow for the fact that somehow or another local community business or businesses could be, assured of being able to participate in a court. Don?
Yeah, and then, excuse my ignorance on this. I know we had some letters written from food court vendors and those desiring to have a spot in the village. When this policy was ultimately written, was there conversation? Was there more engagement there with some of these vendors? If we're going back to planning for this particular item, is there an opportunity maybe to?
Hold on one second, Mary Kay, hold on.
One further point of discussion with some of these vendors, just to get their read on this, to say, hey, is this something that could work for you, or is it something that's too restrictive still? Because quite frankly, if we're doing our job, I think it's we should at least be listening as well, right? And I think we did that, but I don't know how deep.
Well, we have at least one of them on Zoom here with us this evening. I don't know if that's Chris Church or Ken Church who is on. If they're hearing me and want to take mute off and turn their camera on, I would not want to paraphrase for you, Don, one of the letters that they sent in on that. Chris, if you would like to unmute yourself, I would give you the floor to answer Don's question directly.
Thanks, Rob. Yes, if you guys kick it back to the planning commission level, we would love to sit down and maybe work together with the planning commission and figure this out to a reasonable aspect. As far as your,
sorry, Chris, go ahead.
as far as your parking restrictions and all that, I think that needs to get looked at a little more clearly based on your size of the trailer and how many parking spots you have to have, I think is a little ridiculous. But we'd love to sit down and work with the planning commission if they're willing.
Denise?
Back to Don's question. Chris Church and his partners of their barbecue business had originally sent a letter to the Plan Commission. They had also sent something to me only. And at our public hearing, I had asked Chris if he had sent that to the other Plan Commission members. So, and he had said no. So I asked him if it was appropriate, if it would be okay if I forwarded that to all the other plan commission members for review after that meeting. When we heard the little bit of testimony that we did, then we did not make a decision. We tabled our decision until we could read their letter that they had just sent me. So now all the plan commission members could have read it. And then we met the following month. So everybody did read their concerns. There was some, I think, minor tweaking. I would say nothing major. But the plan commission did take their letter into consideration.
So do we, Julie, would we need a motion or simply consensus to move this back to plan commission for readdressing of the wording?
It can be consensus.
Okay. I believe we have consensus to move it back to plan commission, and that would include as well item 9C.
Correct.
So thank you, everyone, for your work on that ordinance draft so far, and we'll get it back to plan commission. And then Denise will let you make the call on, whether that happens this month or next month. It's up to you to decide when you want that.
Yeah, Julie, I was reviewing the draft ordinance for the plan commission for next week's agenda. So unless this meeting goes horrendously long, if we could stay on the Zoom afterwards to talk about what's currently on the agenda.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, everybody.
Okay.
That moves us on to agenda item 10A. Resolutions, resolution number 495, the Zaug Certified Survey Map, detailed on page 117 to 120 of our packets. Julie, do you want to summarize for us, please?
Sure, real quick. This is property. They want to split it into basically 4 lots. It's 3 residential lots and then a remnant lot, which could also be used for residential if they wanted. It's zoned R2, so they have a couple options there. It meets all code requirements. It's a pretty standard CSM. There was nothing unusual about it. We really didn't, there were no issues at plan commission level. It's like I said, straightforward CSM. We recommend adoption or approval.
And the plan commission voted unanimously to recommend approval to the board.
Right.
So any other questions or comments for Julie on this one?
No.
Okay, I will motion that we approve resolution number 495 for the Zaug Certified Survey Map as noted in the packet.
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 10B on page 121 in our packets. Resolution number 496, recognizing Sharon Dorshing for years of service.
Just real quick. So Sharon has served on numerous committees and been around for almost 20 years, giving service to the village. She recently moved out of the village of Sister Bay. So we do want to give her some recognition and thank her for, her time and effort that she put into everything. Big influence, especially when it came to trees, dogs, flowers. So Janelle and Heidi had put together a resolution. We're hoping that the board passes it, they sign it, and then we'll frame it and give it to Sharon.
I will motion that we approve resolution 496, recognizing Sharon Dorshing's years of service to the village of Sister Bay.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Moving on to our discussion and action items. Item 11A. We have I believe, is it a 10-minute max presentation, Julie?
Right, and he doesn't even think it's gonna go that long, so.
Okay, we have a presentation from Door County Economic Development Corporation regarding legislative days.
Mark?
Okay, yeah,
Mark, we'll turn it
here's what
over
we're
to
at,
you.
gang.
Thank you.
Since 2003, every 2 years, I'm gonna have the biennium budget. We've gone down, except for a couple of times. We didn't go down during the pandemic and during Title X was a flames at the Capitol. Other than that, we've done hundreds of really great positive things for Door County. The two biggest ones by far that we did was address the E. coli contamination in 7 beaches of Door County crisis, and then the explosion at the Pioneer Club with the underground propane tanks setting off an explosion that killed a couple and made 2 kids orphans. On the first case, it was a tremendously complex case that needed a lot of different solutions. For example, the first thing we had to do was test the beaches, because no one's going to go to the beaches if they don't know they're safe or not. The next thing we got the University of Oshkosh to do that. Then we need to know what was the cause of it. A bunch of people, we didn't know. A bunch of people thought it was Milwaukee sewers overflowing. What it wasn't. It was our beaches. Our beaches had 2 major problems. One, they were very flat, and 2, the sand was very fine. So after a rain, water would pool, and the sun would come out, and birds would do their thing, and the E. coli would come up. So we found out what the problem was. Then the solution. The solution was to allow to bring in more granular sand and put a pitch to it like a roof so things ran off. And the DNR let you different villages and towns. To my knowledge, I know Sister Bay did, Bailey's Harbor did. I think almost all the villages and towns that have beach that are being actively used took advantage of that program, and that was a $50,000 on that. The second one was the explosion. That law was signed 365 days after the explosion happened, which is the speed of light. The reason I bring this up is we're in a crisis situation that has a perfect storm with getting fiber optics to Door County. We are behind the ball compared to the rest of Wisconsin. There's a lot of other places that have much better coverage than we do. So what we want to do is go down there and really press this. We need villages and town boards to participate in it. We want to we don't get money donated so that we can have people do it for only $25. It gives them lunch and a t-shirt. We've brought 40 kids down there. I'd like to bring 150 kids down next time to emphasize how important this is for schools. It needs to be looked at as an infrastructure. So what I want you to do is 2 things. One, think about, being at a funding level. We have a bunch of different funding levels, 500, 1,000, 15, 2,000, whatever. But also to participate. And if you have any other issues, that's fine. We don't have a single issue thing here. But we want to emphasize this is the time to strike. We really in a position to really expand internet coverage, to make Door County, to put it in the 21st century, to help our students, our businesses, our communities. Healthcare is going to be driven by the internet. There's just so many different levels of efficiencies that can happen, and we need to get that done here this biennium. Any questions?
Mark, I would ask one question of you regarding your point about the internet and expanding and bringing Door County in the 21st century. I'm wondering if a possibility that to my understanding existed several years ago might still exist, and that possibility was this. This was several years ago at a public forum meeting of at what the time was called the Village's Technology Committee. It was chaired by Village President Dave Leno. Our administrator, Zeke Jackson at the time, was part of the committee. And then there were, to my knowledge, several citizen members, of which one was present at a meeting as a public attendee. I attended, at which point Dave Leno was laying out a roadmap for our administrator at the time of the unique scenario of the spread of fiber optic cable going through related to connecting all of the fire station and EMS stations throughout the county. And that in Dave's opinion, at that time, there was a grand opportunity for the village of Sister Bay to lead the way and become a village in Northern Door County that would, in essence, if we tapped into that expansion, we would become the only, at that time, community offering essentially free Wi-Fi and internet to visitors, students, residents, et cetera, businesses, et cetera. Roughly a year or so passed, and at that point, then I had become an elected trustee, and I asked our administrator at the time what had happened with that and where things stood with it, and he said that it had been passed off to Door County Broadband, and then it never came up for discussion at the board level again. So I'm just wondering, is that situation that our former president Leno sounded very secure about in terms of the opportunity to tap into those fiber optic lines connecting all the EMS centers, is that still an opportunity that could be done in a manner that would still provide free access, or, you know, let's call it village-wide access or possibly county-wide access?
I don't know. I could have to get back to you on that. The way I've understood this on being a problem is, as you well know, we have trunk lines that go to a bunch of the villages and towns for primary needs internet, for like hospitals, governmental centers, libraries, schools. You know, they have a special arrangement that has been done with the carriers to provide those lines. I don't believe those lines are set up to be trunk lines for a broadband, a high volume in multiple locations. You know, the glass fiber that is used in this, you know, can carry a lot of messages, but to do a lot, you know, much more of a pipe, get much more energy through there, you need a really big pipe. And I'm not so sure that these trunk lines have that available to them. What I will say is, you know, the county just hired a person to be who was at Door County Broadband, to be the coordinator. And in talking with Ken Pavich and her, you know, she's going to be the lead person. And I see someone asking us about a step-by-step plan. I think that would be the person to get organized to get a step-by-step that the village of Sister Bay could get on board. My sense of what is going to happen on this is it's going to take a multi-tier approach. That it's simply going to be problematic to have it just one sort of. For example, I mean, I could see, you know, like Sturgeon Bay Utilities getting involved somehow in where coverage it has, and then Wisconsin transmission lines, you know, public service lines, some other phone company getting in Northern Door and Southern Door, some of these other areas. I don't think you can have one entity that's going to come in and take the whole thing. You're going to have to work with sections of the private sector that are already partners and players in transmission of information through cable or satellite or whatever else, and work them in a patchwork of all the different areas, because when it gets down to really low densities, it gets really problematic. Not only just from the putting in the infrastructure, but then maintaining the service, the charges that need to be paid to make it profitable for these companies to provide the bandwidth. So, but that's where we're having this one county person is going to be a big step in the right direction to make this a winning situation. The other thing is it really takes a lot of money to do this. And there is the most money from the government, especially the federal government, ever. So there's a really strong possibility we could, you know, get a lot of this all done with what's in the pipeline, but we need to, you know, it's going to take multiple grants to make this happen. The one thing I would argue is Door County is really unique in this, is because we're the only of the 72 counties that's in a dead end alley. You know, every other county, you can come in on one side and normally go out the backside to the next county. And we could make an argument that we need special assistance because of this dead end alley consequence of our geography.
Thank you, Mark. Very interesting. Nate, you had your hand up before?
Yeah, a couple things that Mark said that were a little bit inaccurate. One, any amount of fiber is able to transport pretty much the total sum of the internet. One strand of fiber, you can push about 40 terabits across right now. So it's not a matter of the capacity of there. You're talking about fiber to the home. So getting fiber to that premise. And that's the big push. And that's where the expense comes in. That's where the existing fiber optic structure in the county isn't there. It's just not widespread enough is the issue. It's not a capacity issue. It's not enough fiber there. It's where's the fiber? Two, I think you're talking about the plan that Zeke and Dave were working on. Those probably what 2014-ish, something like that. They were talking about within the village.
Right,
And they wanted us to connect back to the county fiber network,
right,
which is mostly a private access network that was a partnership between the county and Ensight, where the county had access to some of the fiber. However, it couldn't be used for any sort of commercial use. So it wasn't able to, there's a lot of things that they couldn't do it because of the restrictions that were put on there. So it's not something that I think it would have been challenging to put customer traffic on it or like visitor traffic on there. And that was more about the plan they were talking about was distributing within the village.
Right.
And that was also the time where they're putting in the highway. There was talk about putting conduit underneath the highway. That was not to go too far off the tracks, the path here, but there was also the previous IT admin for Door County was a big advocate for that. And some of the things you're even talking about connecting all these other stations goes back to the Brilliant Cities style plan, which was an even older plan there. The funding for connecting that sort of thing, that actually, and you could ask Jess Hatch about it, it's called BEAD funding with the federal government. That window closed somewhere around September 30th. So there's a lot of other things there. I think what Mark is suggesting is that we need to go educate the legislators to make sure that we get the funding on here. In general, in Door County has been successful with legislative days in the past. I've gone down there. It's a worthwhile thing to do. But yeah, I guess that's I just wanted to fill in some of that backstory. You had question.
thank you, Nate. And again, Mark, thank you very much.
Thank you for your efforts, and you guys have a great day.
Thank you.
Moving on to a discussion and action item 11B this evening, the 5-year capital improvement plan 2023 through 2027, detailed on pages 122 through 269 of our packets. We do have a recommendation from staff to approve the capital improvement plan as presented in the packet this evening. Do we have any questions for Tasha and or Julie from trustees on the capital improvement plan as noted?
I have none, Rob.
Nope.
Hearing none, I will motion that we approve the capital improvement plan for 2023 through 2027 as presented in the packet this evening.
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Believe item 11C should also wind up going back to Plan Commission. Correct, Julie, or no?
We could discuss it now, but we can send it back to Plan Commission as well.
Okay, as it pertains to the food vendor licenses, that way we keep it all in one grouping, okay? Item number 11D, draft text amendments to chapter 18, short-term rentals, detailed on pages 271 through 275 of our packet this evening. Julie, would you like to overview for the trustees?
At the last meeting, we had talked about some of the challenges with enforcing the code and that some amendments were required. One amendment we talked about was clarifying the definition of residential dwelling to reflect what the intent of the board really was. So you will see that amendment on page 271. And again, these are just proposed amendments. Oh my God, I just lost it.
I can read it, Julie. The residential dwelling revision says, for purposes of this section, a residential dwelling is not a unit in a hotel, motel, condominium whose building or complex has a central on-site staffed reservation desk and on-site property management.
Okay, thank you. And I'm back too, so.
Yeah.
And then, just some other amendments that, we talked about or felt were necessary. We define short-term rental, but then we go on to say, you need to go to the zoning code. We need to keep those separate so nobody can claim that the short-term rental code is a de facto zoning code. So, the recommendation is we remove that area in red that you see on 272 there. And then you'll see at the bottom just some cleanup language, and it talks about how you notify people. Right now, we're saying that when there's a problem, you have to call or email them. Many times we don't know their phone number or their email. So we have to have some options there. Certified mail is what has been working best for us. So, certainly when we have contact information, we can use it. Otherwise, we have to do certified mail. So just changing that a little bit to give us some options to make sure we can actually reach these people. And then on page 273, again, just saying certified mail. At the bottom of 273, in garbage, we're having, I think that's probably, garbage is probably the biggest problem we're having with short-term rentals right now, where the people that stay are either overloading the garbage cans or putting the garbage on top, or they're hauling it out early, or they're not hauling the bins in. And we're getting a lot of complaints. So this says that if you are a short-term rental, you have to contract for that service to make sure you don't have a problem with it.
And that it's pick up in the driveway or at the home site, not on the curb.
You
And
know,
that
I
is
don't
spelled
think-
out in the revision.
Yeah, it's home. It shall be that it won't be at the curb, but at the home itself. Because what we're finding is if you leave it at the curb, somebody's putting it out early or late. Some of our short-term rentals right now, and they're the ones who actually told us about this, they actually have contracts with Going Garbage, where Going Garbage goes up to the side of the house, takes the garbage, wheels it out, empties it, and then brings it back to the side of the house.
Okay.
So it works, it's going to cost them a little more money, but I think that can also be, I think it's affordable for the revenue that these are bringing in as well.
And it prevents the bins from being out there up to 6 days before they would be picked up
Right.
on the road.
When you get onto the next page, you'll, again, minor amendments, but you'll see one area that I'd like to have a little discussion on, and that is, it says that there's quiet hours are 10 p.m. to 10 a.m. We really don't say what quiet hours are, so I just propose a definition there that we can use to make the code more understandable. And then my question too is, in this code, we say quiet hours are 10 to 10. Elsewhere in our municipal code, we have different hours. So, is it our intent to have 10 to 10 for short-term rentals when we have, back to those old noise and debates we've had for the last 6 months, but is that our intent, is to say if you are in a short-term rental, it's going to be quiet after 10 before 10 and after 10. So just some direction on that. Other than that, I think these amendments are ready to go unless somebody has an issue with them or some questions or need some clarification.
Denise?
I think if you are running an STR, most likely in a residential zoning district, and you have neighbors close to you, that even though the hours are a little bit different from other places, I think it's very much appropriate as people who live in their home year round periodically may have a 4th of July celebration, Labor Day, Memorial. But for the people who rent STR, it's party time all the time. And so I think the hours are fair and reasonable.
As at 10 to 10, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
We have citizen with his hand up, Mark Collings.
Thank
I
you,
will
Rob.
give you the floor.
Thank you. Since I don't have the packet in front of me, I can't see the specific adjustments to the code. But concerning the Yacht Club of Sister Bay, I thought in the last round and the amendments that a premise or a development like the Yacht Club of Sister Bay would not be included in the short-term rental ordinances. Is that been adjusted? I'm sorry if I missed it.
Yeah, we have a revision in the residential dwelling, a revision in the ordinance that reads, for purposes of this section of the ordinance, a residential dwelling is not a unit in a hotel, motel, condominium whose building or complex has a central on-site staffed reservation desk and on-site property management.
Thank you for the clarification. Sorry to waste your time.
Okay. Any other discussion from trustees on the short-term rental drafts?
I
Hearing
agree
none.
that 10 to 10 is a good time.
The other thing I would just mention for trustees edification, if you're not aware of it, if you haven't already received one in the mail to your residents, as to the question that often comes up as to, well, how are we going to deal with enforcement? In essence, there's some enforcement viability in place by the new policy that the owner's contact information gets sent to residents who live within the near boundaries of a licensed short-term rental. So if those quiet hours are being exceeded to the detriment of those surrounding neighbors, they'll have the contact information of the owner or the management company for the owner right there in front of them based on their village mailing. All right, I will motion that we approve the amendments to Chapter 18 for short-term rentals as noted this evening.
Rob,
Yes,
just sorry to interrupt you real quick. What we'd want to do is approve them to go forward as an ordinance. And then at the next meeting, we'll have an actual ordinance that we would adopt, you know, where it says whereas, and it has all the special language.
okay.
Right now, we would just be recommending that this move forward as an ordinance.
Is consensus sufficient for that then?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay, believe we have consensus to move that forward then for presentation as a resolution.
Great. Great.
Thank you very much for everyone's work on this. For the trustees, just so you're aware, you know, Denise serving as our zoning administrator while we were awaiting the arrival ultimately of Julie to become the zoning administrator, did a lot of diligent and excellent work for a long time on this. So Denise, thank you again for all your efforts. bringing
Thank
this
you,
forward.
Rob.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on to item 11E, an amended village street map related to Shoals Court and the Mosaic development. This is on pages 276 and 277 of our packet. Julie, do you want to give us a quick summary here?
Sure. This is, as you know, we have a new housing development in town. It's on Cherrywood Lane. It's called the Mosaic Development, and the private road that serves that property needs a road name. And so it went to the Plan Commission because they actually have rules on road names, you know, how long, it has to be easily understandable, things of that nature. The road name that they're recommending approval of is Shoals Court. And so if the board agrees with that, then what'll happen is we will actually amend the official transportation map, our official street map to show that. And we'll let the county know as well that that is the official road name. And then the owner can proceed to actually get addresses and mailboxes and things of that nature up. So we just need that formal approval if the board is okay with that.
Any questions from trustees? I will motion that we approve as requested the amended village street map detailing Shoals Court for Mosaic Development.
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carried. Moving on to discussion item 11F, request to purchase 2 lots at Ava Hope Court. I am going to be recusing myself based on the fact that the potential purchasers are my employer, and I am going to recuse myself and turn this agenda item over to Julie to lead the rest of the trustees through.
Okay, so as you recall, we had sold some property along Ava Hope Court and Ava Hope Trail. On Ava Hope Court, we had sold 1 lot to Paula Anschutz, basically her organization, to place a 4-plex on the lot. The 4-plex is sitting out on our lots, but it will be eventually moved on to her lot, we hope. And then on the other side of Northwoods Drive on Ava Hope Trail, we are in the process of selling 4 lots to the housing partnership, who is going to put up workforce housing there. And we're in the midst of actually finalizing that sale. So we've done some title work and we're set up a closing. So that's coming real close. That actually leaves 4 lots out there. 2 on the north side of Ava Hope, if you're looking at the map, would be 2394 and 2390, which staff is recommending we retain for ourselves for a project we'll bring forward, basically a village park. But we have somebody interested in purchasing 2397 and 2391, which are on the south side of Ava Hope. Together, these 2 lots are a little over a ½ acre. And the person who wants to buy them, Vilius, as you saw in the packet, wants to put up workforce housing there. He'd like to put a duplex on each lot, or if the Plan Commission allows him, he would put up a 4-plex and straddle the lot. That would be allowed by the subdivision restrictions, and it would be allowed by zoning if it had approval, if it had commission approval. So the lots, what the village has into these lots, we currently, our cost on the lots is $54,000. That's what we paid and what we have invested. And Vilius is willing to pay the full $54,000 for each lot. Other than that, I can answer some questions for you. Just to give you a little bit, little more information, real quick, Denise, before I go to you, is on these properties, if you recall, we had to take out a loan on the lots out in this area, in the Stony Ridge area. We have $228,000 yet that we owe on the mortgage. $100,000 is the other lots are sold for $100,000 in total, which means we still would have $128,000 to pay. And if we sold them for $54,000, we would only owe $20,000 more on that mortgage. So we're getting really close to paying that off. Denise, you had a question or comment?
Something that you said, we're selling 8 lots, not 4, to the housing trust.
Thank you. Yep.
Yes, 8.
Okay.
Yes.
That was
Sorry.
my question.
So this is my concern, and I am not in favor of this at this time. As we have found out that when we tried to help someone, no good deed goes unpunished. And we have not either rezoned that property yet. We do not have any deed restrictions on it yet. And we also, when we agreed to sell the 8 lots to the housing trust, we said that that we would hold on to the other 2, see what happens, and get back to them on any decisions we would make in the future on selling them to someone else other than themselves. But specifically because we haven't rezoned those lots, no deed restrictions on it yet, I am not in favor of selling them to any private party at this time until, if we chose to, those issues would be addressed.
I agree.
Yeah, I would concur. I think I was going to actually challenge my own memory on this, but I remember selling 8, having a long discussion around the other 2, saying, "Hey, well, let's hold on to those for now, but we'll revisit those with our partner in a future time." So I remember it the same exact way.
Just to know, when we were talking about selling all 10
Yep.
to the housing partnership, and then remember we went into that meeting because somebody had offered to purchase 2. It was this particular party that we're talking about. It was Villius. And we said, well, wait a minute, let's see what he has to say. So we're dealing with basically the same party. So when we had dealt with the housing partnership and we put it on hold, it was to review this very request. It's just taken a while to get back to us. Before us. So it's not like it's a new party.
I'm still not in favor of it at this time.
Okay. Don, do we have or Nate, do we have any motions on this?
A motion to deny request?
Yeah.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor of denial?
Aye.
Okay, opposed? All right, so at this time, we would not be selling those 2 lots to Villius, so. All right, that is the end of that one, Rob.
Thank
Put
you.
it back in your hands.
Item 11G, declaration of surplus small village property and or equipment, in particular a snowplow and a mower deck. Trustees will see on page 280, we have a brief recap of village policy that if our public works director comes upon surplus property with a value less than $1,000, there's a process that includes a declaration that the items can be disposed of or established at a fair and equitable asking price and advertised for sale to the public. Or potentially as an online auction to the highest bidder. In essence, we have 2 items before us that qualify, the snowplow and the mower deck. So what's before us is a recommendation from staff to declare that the department can move forward with disposal or sale of those 2 items. Any questions? I will motion that we approve and declare the surplus small village property as noted this evening for disposition by the Public Works Director.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
I
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 11H, surveying and other legal work to acquire land for road purposes on Mill Road, detailed on page 281 and 282 of our packets. Julie, would you summarize, please, where we're at for the trustees on this particular?
Sure. We need to do some major road work on Mill Road, west of Highway 42. And basically we need to replace the storm sewer that is out there. If you've been out in that area, you see a lot of flooding or ponding on the road. It's it's in bad shape. It's got to be redone. So initially, when we were looking at this proposal, we thought to ourselves, boy, it would be nice to get the land on the south side of Mill Road and straighten out our sewer line and go through there to redo the road. And while we're at it, it would be nice to put some parking in that area. I had at that time talked to somebody from the yacht club who said, yeah, I think, you know, we're interested, because in exchange for them giving us their land, we would give them our land, which means, you know, their right of way or their front lawn would be protected a little bit, because right now it's in our right of way. So they would gain that and give them some security. Nobody would ever tear it up someday. In exchange, we would get this land. We did go to the Parks Properties and Streets Committee, and they were supportive of the land swap to do the infrastructure, but not to put parking in there. So this recommendation comes to you to request approval to commence the legal work to swap the properties, but know that it is not for parking. It is purely for the street repair project. Since that time, since we've met, the yacht club has got a new president, and I've spoken with him, and he said, yeah, we wouldn't want parking over on that south side of the road. So I think, you know, the action that the streets committee took to say, yeah, let's go ahead and swap it so we can get the road repaired, but let's not put parking there. It ended up being that kind of makes everybody involved happy. I think, you know, the streets committee was happy with that, and the yacht club, who owns the land right now and is considering swapping with us, they would be happy with that as well.
Julie, could I just interject for 1 second?
Sure.
And Denise may recall this as well, or in fact, I think we've got Ron Kanan, who could voice as a citizen, as a member of the Plan Commission, or excuse me, not Ron, from Plan. When this went through Parks, Julie, and you said Parks was supportive of it, what I recollect was a motion that Denise made to just move this up to the board level without a recommendation one way or the other. Am I recollecting that correctly, Denise? Or
No.
No, I remember it the way Julie presented it.
Okay.
So one thing I do have to tell you about this proposal, in my haste of getting the report done, is I forgot another chunk of property. So Heidi, can you just pull up that map real quick, and I'll talk about it while you pull that up. So you see this map in front of you. On the left, you see the yellow property we were just talking about. That triangle to the right is also owned by the yacht club, and that is also a property we asked them if they would swap with us, and as of right now, they're willing to do that. That property, we would, you know, the storm sewer isn't going to run under that little triangle, but we wanted to acquire that as well, to kind of clean up that area, I guess, if you'd say, you know, you're putting curb and gutter, make everything look nice. And on that triangle, we proposed that we put bike racks, so that next to the village parking lot, which you can see in the upper right-hand corner of that photo, you know, that's the parking for the beach. Right across, then you would have some bike racks and kind of improving the area, because right now it's pretty overgrown with weeds, and if we're doing the street, we may as well clean everything up. So the request before you would be to authorize the exchange and begin the legal process of surveying, drafting easements, etc. We still have time where we sit, you know, the yacht club still has time to review it and say, no, I'm done, I'm backing out. We still have time to say that as well, but it's to begin the actual process so we can move this discussion forward.
Okay.
Dan, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I really think you covered everything pretty well.
Okay.
So Julie, then if I'm understanding your points here this evening and what's on page 281 of the packet, is it inherent in the way this memorandum is written that this is solely for sewer work and that there will be no parking involved?
That is correct. So the streets committee said they were not interested in putting parking on that yacht club land that we would acquire. So right now it is to repair the street, make it look good, put some curb and gutter out there, no parking.
We've got Yacht Club board member Mark Collins with us here this evening, and he's raising his hand. Mark, I'm going to give you the floor to weigh in on this.
Thanks, Rob, and appreciate the time. Julie, I appreciate your time and walking through this. I am on the board and the current president of the board. The Yacht Club and I visited after Julie and my conversation, went back to the board and went through the conversation with the previous board member who's no longer on the board. It was our understanding that we were willing to at least look at the exchange, barring pending legal work and surveys coming back to us and diagrams as to what ultimately would happen. At the end of the day, the board really would be willing to look at the land swap, provided that we could write in that there would be no parking on either side of the street going forward. In addition to that, I think what we'd like to do is make sure that there's proper landscaping. And I see Mr. Klansky, I think, is on the board and also in the house that would be affected, since he's got a nice brush area right now that kind of protects him between the road and his house, that proper shrubbery and trees be put in place. That way the village gets to put their sewer system in, move the road over, and with no future parking. The board's and Yacht Club's concerns in this whole matter are just basically what happened over the Fall Fest weekend, where we had 20 plus cars parked on the street, plus everybody going into our parking lot and turning around in our parking lot. If ultimate parking does get put in that spot, then you're going to probably look at 16 to 20 plus parking spots, and they're going to be traffic in our parking lot and our property, which brings more people to walk through the property and potential damage. We'd really like to keep the integrity of this area within Sister Bay, be neighborly, provide the sewer right away that you're looking for to improve the streets. Recommend you don't put a curb. There's no curbs back here anyhow. Keep it with the integrity of the Sister Bay and the village of Sister Bay. And so if you're willing to do that, I think there'd be no problems at all from the Yacht Club going forward. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mark. Denise?
Just a couple things I guess I'd like to ask Mark. Dan Klansky does not live over there.
Jack Cadelco.
Oh,
is that-
sorry. I apologize.
Okay, just
I
clarify.
apologize.
Okay, and secondly, because during Fall Fest and at the height of summer and the beach is so heavily used, do you not think that curb and gutter would deter people from parking because they're not going to go up over the curb and park on your lawn?
Correct.
Well, I see your point, Denise, and I think it's a very valid one. However, the street is highly marked with no parking signs currently. Does that stop everybody from parking on the side of the street because there's not very much enforcement? No. So I understand the curbs. I guess the part on the curbs was just trying to keep the integrity of the village itself the way it is and keeping it, the charming aspect. But if a curb is something that would help discourage people from driving up on the property, I think we'd be open for that. The main concern is parking going forward, that a new committee may be formed, a new boards get formed, and then all of a sudden, 2 years from now, there's 20 parking spots across the street, and so we prefer to try to write that into the agreement of the land swap.
I personally have no issue with that. I don't know how anybody else feels. Dan Klansky, did you want to say something?
Just to reiterate what you said about the curb, you really need the curb to catch the stormwater as it's coming down the hill too. I mean, it's a necessity. You can do a profile, low, maybe a rolled curb, but you would need something to catch the water coming down the hill to run out. That's why we're using that area for a stormwater catch basin.
So when you put the curb in, would you look at adding additional sidewalks as well, or just a curb?
That would really be up to the board if they would want a sidewalk along one side. It has not been suggested, but with the current width of acquiring that, we probably could do a sidewalk.
I guess, again, I'm the curb I can understand because I'm not an engineer as it relates to stormwater runoff. However, wanting to kind of keep the community as much as it is and be neighborly, curb great, sidewalk. I guess there's no other sidewalks on the rest of the streets other than the main on 42. So I guess we would prefer not to have the sidewalk in parking going forward.
Denise?
Mark, are you referencing no sidewalk on your side of the road or either side of the road? Because we are trying to put in more sidewalks in this village as we redo roads, trying to make it more safe, pedestrian friendly. We have a lot of big plans to put trails throughout the village along Highway 57. So I'd like to clarify if you don't want a sidewalk on either side, or if we did one on Chad Kadanko's side of the road, if that would be okay, but not your side.
So Denise, I appreciate the fact that the village is looking to be more pedestrian friendly, and especially I can absolutely see you putting a sidewalk up on 57 being such a busy street. But given Mill Road and the proximity of Mill Road and where it's located, our preference would be, of course, neither side. But if there had to be something done, then I would say I would prefer it to be on the swapped side, i.e. Kadenko, Mr. Kadenko's side of the street. But the preference would be not to have any sidewalk at all.
Okay.
I have a question for you, Denise. Something I've heard repeatedly over the years is that we do not want to tie future boards' hands. This seems like we're tying future boards' hands with this, and I'm just trying to reconcile that position, because I don't think this is the same thing, but at the same point, I've heard that a number of times.
I think this is, I hear what you're saying. I probably said that many times myself. And I think as part of the negotiation that we are trying to have with the yacht club, that to not put parking there makes sense. It was a recommendation from Parks, Property and Streets. I had contacted Chris Heck, talked to him at length about it. He did show up on the phone call. He talked to the committee himself in his own words. We still came to that determination. It's a very congested area, and there's all kinds of unintended consequences trying to appease the Americans that don't want to walk 2 blocks to the beach.
Okay. I'm trying to understand, that's all.
Nate, I would offer a opinion and clarification. I support Denise's stance on this as she expressed it earlier. I vividly recall instances you're referring to, Nate, about when we've discussed not tying a future board's hands on a particular discussion or item of interest or action item. To my recollection, those were none of those involved what is really to my knowledge, a novel concept of a land swap with a landholder and swapping land and coming up with terms of agreement to swap land. I remember us talking about not tying other boards' hands on, standalone village, more sedentary village properties or issues than something involving the swapping of land with a negotiation involved. I think this is a different situation. Julie, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I just want to add that, when we were talking about putting parking there, it did involve a substantial amount of fill and building a retaining wall. And the Parks, Properties and Streets Committee said that's just too much investment for an area. So I don't really think this one's finding a future board. I think it's more saying, in reality, this just isn't the right thing to do here. And no board, can't say never, but I don't think a future board would say, what the heck, let's go dump all that fill in there and build that wall and take out the curb and redo it. I don't think they're gonna do it. So I think it's pretty safe to say this one is, I don't want to say the exception, but I think it is a little different.
And it's also because it's such a more limited scope where it's only applying to certain parcels. I'm just trying to reconcile. I understand that. I guess I can understand it, and I can see seating parking back there. I think that we actually have enough parking. We just need better access to it. And I would be adamantly opposed to restricting sidewalks back there, because I think that is going to be vital. While it may not seem like it's a connection, I can tell you I walked on that portion of Mill Road frequently. And it's not very safe to go on because it is so narrow, and we shouldn't be putting pedestrians in the street, and we shouldn't be committing the village to not having sidewalks there for perpetuity.
I agree with you, Nate, and that's why I support the position the way Mark Collins outlined it, as far as with some sort of written stipulation in the paperwork about no parking, that if the village chose to have a sidewalk on the opposite side of the street of Yacht Club, that they would be open to discussing that further on their side. I'm in support of that.
I'll make a motion to,
Can we hold on just one second?
Okay.
I believe, yeah, Vilius has his hand up. I'm going to recuse myself again here, Julie, but you should explain, he's raising his hand as a property owner in the area, and I'll let you take over
Okay.
and allow Vilius's question and any follow-up.
Okay. Vilius, I cannot see you, but I'm trusting Rob seeing you. So you had something you wanted to add to this proposal?
I just have two questions because I'm a property in the middle of it. I just want to ask if village did the survey after all the improvements, how the water will be running off, because I don't want my place being flooded by changing any elevations or any of that stuff. And another question would be, my property is so close to the road and to those two parcels village is looking at. I'm just wondering where village is gonna move snow in winter time, because my fence is right on the lot line, and I don't want village pushing my fence in or damaging it in winter time.
Okay, so I can answer that, or Dan, do you want to answer that?
I was just gonna say, last year we just took a truck down and hauled out those corners where the snow, we would never destroy your personal property. And then there'll be 2 storm drains with some type of curbing. We'll catch it. It will stop the water from rolling, and actually your drainage will be better once we get this pipe installed. You'll have actually probably a drier backyard than you currently have.
I just want to make sure I'm raising those questions, because if something happens, it would be on the record.
Yep.
Right, and thank you for that. I think with the curbing there too, it makes it so there's less damage to any property when somebody is removing snow. So I think that might actually be a plus, but
Absolutely.
okay, I'm glad you put that on the record. So,
I'd like to, there's a couple, outstanding Avilius's property there. There's a couple other property owners who are not present, but in the same regard and in relation to them, I'd ask Dan a follow-up question. So just to your point there about how the snow removal would not affect any of those properties over there. Were we to move forward with a sidewalk on that side, I am assuming it would be a sidewalk that would be suitable for use of the village snow removal equipment, et cetera, if we decided in that area to clear that sidewalk like we do downtown, et cetera. Since we owned that area in this swap and it was our sidewalk, we would have some sort of responsibility for that. Are you saying, Dan, then that just for the sake of understanding, snow would be removed in a manner that would not push it onto any of those properties? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay. Mark Collins, you've got your hand up. I'll give you the floor.
Thanks, Rob. Vilius, nice to meet you as a property owner across the street. I just kind of curious with the sidewalk, and again, we'll be fine with the sidewalk on the other side of the street. I'm sure I can make sure everybody's happy with that on our side. But if Vilius's property is going all the way to the fence and to the street, how can you take a sidewalk all the way down the other side of the street? If you put the map back up, how I guess I'm kind of curious as to how you do that. Or are you just going to put a sidewalk for just the short part of the street?
yeah, right now we could not. So it's kind of a moot issue right now because without Vilius's participation on that, there would not be a sidewalk right now. I think the comment is, we don't know what the future holds. So at some point, if anything changed, they, a future board could decide to put that sidewalk down there. Right now, we cannot though.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Denise?
So what Julie just said, so Vilius is not, we don't have any right of way there. Is that what you're saying? And he does not want, he is unwilling to grant an easement for a sidewalk?
That is correct. Dan would have to look at, see if the engineering can swing wide, I guess. But clearly the easiest is to just continue going across Vilius's property. He had said, I'm not sure if you remember at an earlier meeting, he had said he would be willing to give us an easement as long as it didn't hurt him as far as open space goes. And and this is when we were talking about putting parking there. And as long as he would be able to have 2 of the stalls for any future development he did. But then we said no parking there. So that we were not going to proceed with parking. So that kind of negated that whole conversation. We could open that conversation up with Vilius and see, is he willing to give us an easement for a sidewalk? Without it though, it would be a goofy sidewalk or pretty narrow. We'd have to work with the engineers to see how we could get that designed.
Okay, so we'll leave it up to the engineers and see if it's possible.
So then, Julie, do we need a motion or simply consensus to move forward with presenting Yacht Club a land swap proposal with the written language about no parking on either side of Mill Road? How do we proceed next with this?
So we would basically want a motion to proceed with surveying and legal work for a land transaction.
I will make. Oh.
I was going to say, and I think we should note for the record that we want the final proposal to come back to the board for approval.
Okay. All right, I will make that motion.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 11I. Approve the request for proposals related to the Public Works Building. Pages 283 to 293 of our packet.
All right, so at our October 4th board meeting, the board voted to proceed with a new public works building. So the next phase is to get something designed and figure out what that's going to cost us, so we know what to budget, how to proceed, etc. We got to start the ball rolling. This proposal, and we can change it if we want, but this proposal says, hey, we have two properties in mind. We haven't made up our mind. You as the designer, tell us which site is better and what it's going to cost to design a building for us. And then, of course, we would proceed with saying who is the lowest bidder, and then proceed with having them do their site evaluation work and design in a building.
Denise?
I was not at that October 4th meeting. I believe that's the one that you had in person.
Yeah.
Correct.
And so until I read the packet, I was unaware that the board at that meeting was moving this forward. I have some very big concerns that we are putting the cart before the horse. We have yet to establish exactly, or maybe we've established what we want to do out on the Wilsey property, but after that presentation, it wasn't specific enough. It did not include any of the sports complex property. It didn't include any of the property on Autumn Court that the village owns, the long-term marina parking. And I think to go and spend a lot of money on designing a building when we don't know what is going to go where. And we could design a building, but yet down the road, somebody might propose that the Parks building be incorporated into the administration building, and it's one big building, which is cheaper than building two separate buildings. I don't know what the outcome is going to be. So I'm just curious, did the board have that conversation? Because I'm a definite no vote. We have to know what we're putting out there, what property it's taking up, what needs to be shuffled around, if anything, instead of just trying to put it on two different parcels just because. I think we need a plan, and we've taken a couple steps forward, but I feel that we need to go further.
I have one quick question for you on your point, Denise. And it related to one of my questions about the timing, the timeline for this is noted in page 286 and 287 of our packets, where the proposal essentially is to have the deadline of December 12th for proposals to come in, and that seems rather quick to me in general, in particular for things you mentioned, Denise. So my question for you before we move on to Don is, could the scope of what your positioning is lacking at this time, which I don't disagree with, could that additional work or the proposals for involvement in that work be handled if we had a longer timeline, say a 6-month timeline, and that it would include in these requests for proposals that they would detail how they would work with the various staff or trustee or committee level people on this?
Well, I
Or are
think
you-
you could just
or-
hold off on the proposals. I think
Okay.
2 or 3 months ago, it was supposed to come back to the Plan Commission. I think our meeting ran really long. We tabled a bunch of the items because they required a lot of thought process, and then it didn't make the next meeting, and now we're here going over the agenda for this month's meeting, and it's not on there. I think it has to go back to committees to kind of figure, either make a final determination. This is the list of 10 things that we want to do out there. And
Okay.
everybody, every committee, the board signs off on that. We hire somebody to say, this is what we need out there. This is what we want. Draw it. And this is all the property that you get to use, not just the 56 acres.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, Don, that I had to rebuttal there.
No, I thank you for that clarification, Denise. It makes sense. Don, you have the floor.
Yeah, look, if we're being real, that special board meeting we had in person at the fire station, I think there was only 3 agenda items. This was one. The main one was the village hall discussion and how we were going to discuss that, vote that, what we were going to do. So this one, it quite frankly, seemed like we were voting to allow a plan. Not voting anything more or less than that, just voting to allow us to plan to see what we should do with that building, nothing else. So it could have been premature. It maybe was felt like it could have been a throw-in on the agenda because we had a bigger thing to talk about that night. So to be fair to Denise, it probably was something that was maybe less well thought out than it should have been, especially when you're looking at a bigger picture for everything. But it really wasn't anything more than, do we all agree that we should plan something in another place, in another for that building? And I think we all said yes, we should. Whatever that looked like, I think happens next. So it really was. There was a few folks more eager to talk about the village hall, I think, quite frankly. So
Yeah.
That's an excellent point, Don.
Yeah, I agree with that, Don. Thanks.
So then Denise, are you suggesting that we
no
just
vote.
table this until further notice, or do we need a?
That's up to the board on whether.
Make a
or not
motion, we
you-
table this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. I will second that motion. All those in favor say aye.
I
Opposed? Motion carried.
Can we have some
So-
discussion on that, Rob?
Sure, absolutely.
So when are we gonna table it to, and what specific reason? Because just a little background, Denise is right. This went to the Plan Commission. They ran out of time, so it went to Parks. Then Parks made the motion that it move forward to the board right away, so it never did go back to planning. But every staff memo has said, hey, you need to find which spot, tell us a spot, and we keep glossing over that. So is this tabled until a spot is selected? Or what are we gonna do with it? The proposal here says, hey, give us your bit of what it's gonna take for you to do this for us, and then tell us which site is best for us. If you read the proposal, you'll see that. So are we tabling until we have a site in mind? Or what is the tabling for, just so staff knows how to proceed?
I envision the answer to your question, Julie, being in the manner in which Denise raised her points. Coming up soon in the agenda tonight, when we talk about revising bylaws for committees and whatnot, we have a draft proposal in front of the board for a timeline for ad hoc land acquisition committee to, give the board the last they have to say as a committee on that property. In my opinion, that's a integral part of what Denise is saying, as far as from the committee level, let's get to the board these are the things that have to be out there. Not saying they're the only committee to weigh in on it, but in my opinion, if everyone agrees with the timeline that we have in that draft form later this evening for when ad hoc land acquisition has to say, this is the deadline for everything you have to say, period, that we just use that deadline as the tabling, and then other committees, et cetera, have a timeline and staff knows, okay, by this point in time, we're moving forward.
Okay.
Denise?
Well, I would like to expand on that. I want to, from my recollection, I think, Julie, when you went back to Bay Lakes Regional Planning, they said we had used up everything, and what you were asking them for was going to cost an additional $12,000.
Right.
I am looking for an outside entity to look at all the property that we own out there and incorporate everything that we currently have and everything that we want. I want it drawn on a piece of paper and for myself before I can ever move forward on spending money designing buildings. If somebody tells me that we need to incorporate, multiple different departments into one larger building that will be just less of a footprint, one common parking area, I think that might be wise, but I don't know any of that. I am not the professional. I need a plan in place before I can vote to spend money.
So Denise, are you looking for, you're not looking for just a recommendation out of that committee or the committees, you're actually looking for us to hire someone to put together, actually look at all of our buildings out there and I don't want to say doing sports complex planning, but in that vicinity, just public facility planning, saying where's it going to be, what size should, okay.
Yeah, I'm looking at
sounds-
hiring that person that all the committees have weighed in, especially ad hoc land acquisition. This is the list of the things that we want out there. This is the list of the things that are currently there. This is the amount of property you have to use. Not saying that they're going to tear up the soccer field or the ball field or anything else like that. That, of course not. But of the other vacant property that's there, what is the best use of all of it? I'm looking for that drawing, hiring that company to do that.
And if
Okay.
each committee gets that list, call it a wish list, whatever, each committee's plan, if those all come to the board and the board summarizes that or agrees on a summary of, okay, X committee says 10 this, X committee, Y committee says 10 this, and the board comes up with the summary of the 10 that it's going to be, at that point, then we could move forward with, okay, we need to hire somebody, which essentially is going to then produce an architectural rendering, for lack of a better term, of
Well,
that.
no, not an
idea, right,
architectural
Denise?
rendering. It would be just a site plan.
A site plan, okay.
Yeah.
All
And
right.
then once we agree to the site plan and work through that, then you hire, okay,
Okay.
this is the exact place that the Parks building is going to go. And here's all the criteria that we need for the Parks building. This needs to be the size, the storage, how many trucks we have, et cetera, et cetera. And then that's when you get the architectural renderings and the estimated costs of building it. That's how I see it happening.
Yeah, so just a little, in my experience, with these type of projects, what happens is when you put the RFP out there and you get the designer, he then goes to, he looks at the facility, he meets with the staff. Usually he'll meet with the committee if that's part of your process. And he'll say, he finds out what their needs are. He finds out what the growth opportunities are. And based on that information, then he starts designing a building. And, he'll come back and he'll say, this is my he'll have preliminary plans. This is my recommendation, 100 by 200 building, storage here, dry storage here, blah, blah, blah. And then we all tear it apart. No, we don't like that. We think it should be this. And he's like, okay, well, I can change it. And then he comes back with a final plan. And then that's the plan we use to put out for bids. So so what I'm hearing, I think, is we want that process, but we also want it after the site is identified. So figure out the site, step one. Pay somebody, find some money, and find someone to walk us through that process. Come back and have them design it, which is what this is right here. And then step three is come back and build it. So we want to insert a step ahead of time and tell us what is the best site and why.
For everything, yes.
For
If
everything.
that's the 12,000 that we would have to, the Bay Lakes told you that they would need to do that, then maybe that's an option. Maybe that's the road we want to go down. Maybe it's not. I'll leave
Yeah.
that conversation for another day.
Yeah, we don't have the 12,000 and I don't think we'd use Bay Lake on that because I think we need to, just because I think we saw I think we need more for the money.
Okay.
This sounds like a lot of work. So we'll work on that. Staff will go back. We'll take a look at that. So it is tabled until we can identify a site for all of our needs.
Yes.
Sounds good to me. So we have consensus on that, I believe, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, makes
Okay.
sense. Makes sense.
Excellent. Okay, moving along to item 11J. Discussion on village committees. You'll see starting on page 294 in our packet, the administrative committee has been meeting, Julie and I, related to drafting recommendations for status and fate of various committees moving forward. And I'm going to read from the staff memorandum for the edification of all trustees. Several of our committees have not met in quite some time, or their roles have changed and perhaps they are no longer needed. As such, the administrative committee has recommended the following to the board, starting with the Communications and Technology Committee. The bylaws do not indicate what the purpose of this committee is. However, 2013 board minutes describe the committee as follows. A, to oversee and recommend content for the various village websites. B, to oversee and recommend content for other village external publications. And C, to make recommendations regarding technology and submit to the Finance Committee. This committee has not met in 2022. Additionally, staff has been responsible for the content for items A and B above. Staff has also, at their initiative, begun working with the county broadband coordinator on fiber and other matters of concern. It is recommended this committee be dissolved and staff report directly to the Parks, Properties, and Streets Committee, since that is the committee overseeing infrastructure and public buildings. If approved, we would want to add to the Parks, Properties, and Streets Committee description a line that reads, quote, responsible for ensuring adequate access to technology and broadband infrastructure to public properties and buildings, end quote. This committee was not created by resolution, so it can be dissolved by simple motion. Discussion, Denise?
Are you going to read through every section?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So we have a recommendation here to dissolve by simple motion the Communications and Technology Committee and assign the additional responsibility to Parks as described. Any discussion?
No.
Okay, I will motion that we dissolve the Communications and Technology Committee with the addition to the Parks responsibilities as noted. Tasha?
Gosh,
Can I make a recommendation that related to any kind of software, that it go to the standing committee for purview, like finance software would go to finance, utility, if anything they'd need, it would go to utility. I think it makes more
Okay.
sense.
So Julie, how do you want to reword your write up there?
It could just say that it is referred to the applicable oversight committee.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. All right, so we had a, I'll strike, I'll rescind my first motion. And I will make the revised motion as noted and clarified by Tasha and Julie.
I'll second it, Rob.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Emergency Management Plan Commission. Per the bylaws, this committee was created in 2019 for the purpose of engaging in emergency management planning activities for the village. This committee has not met for 2 years. Although a plan is required by statute, a committee is not. Staff has been in communications with the County Emergency Management Director regarding a plan update and has reached out to a consultant to see what the cost of updating the plan would be. It is staff's recommendation they work on the plan and report to the Parks, Properties, and Streets Committee, since that committee oversees the public buildings which are to be used for shelters, the streets, and other public infrastructure that could be affected during a disaster, and recommending mitigation measures to protect the shoreline, of which the village owns a significant share. If approved, we would want to add to the Parks, Properties, and Streets Committee description a line that reads, responsible for ensuring the hazard mitigation plan is updated and implemented. This committee was not created by resolution, so it can be dissolved by simple motion. Discussion?
Yep.
Don Cox?
Yeah, just on the greater point, we've got 2 more pages of these. Is there any way, since you set them out in advance to everybody to read, that we can take an action on questions on any of it before? I mean, is there a reason you have to read every one of these individually, verbatim?
If everyone is well versed in reading the packet, then I'm fine in just entertaining questions to each section. I think it's important that we vote committee, that we
That's
motion by each committee noted.
Yeah, no,
Denise?
that's fair. That's fair.
Questions to Emergency Management Plan Commission?
So, yes, we have not met in 2 years. We did have a few meetings before COVID hit, and Dan at the county was much too busy with the pandemic at that time, and so was Chief Heck, who was also on the committee. I can reach out to Dan again, although Julie thinks that we should possibly hire somebody on our own. This committee had really nothing to do with the county plan. This committee was created at my urging to address some of the very specific things that we can or should do in the future to plan and prepare for a variety of different issues. Chris Heck is in favor of keeping it. He is willing to start meeting again. Julie said that we should call it a task force instead. I have no problem with staff working, with the county and the county's plan, but this was going to be something different and much more detailed than the county plan. I know that we've had some conversation about getting grant money for a shelter when we would need it. Right now, we do have the fire station. It has been used. We think it's large until people in droves start needing to come to a place that is heated. So if I can get this committee up and running again, and I'd like Julie to chime in on her thoughts on a different way to go with this committee, just to give you some more information, but I'd like to hang on to it and start meeting.
Sure. So Yeah, my understanding is that the committee was not to help with the county plan. It was really coming up with our own plan. And I have reached out to a consultant to say, and I'm waiting for a reply from her. I actually contacted Dan at the county and I'm like, Dan, who's doing, hazard mitigation plans in our area? And he gave me the name of someone, and I had reached out to her and to get a bid on what would it cost to have her lead us through that planning process for our own hazard mitigation plan. So we know, when this road goes out, this is our backup plan, or where we need generators, or where we're having our storm shelter, things of that nature. And, yeah, I think if we want to keep the committee, I think it should be a task force saying, here is your task, and when it's done, it's done. But I also think that it should be with the help of the consultant guiding the committee, because unless you've done a hazard mitigation plan and been through that process, you're going to stumble a lot. You're going to waste a lot of time and energy. It's better if you have somebody say, okay, now this is what we do. We're going to do this first. We're going to do this second. Let's have a conversation on this. They put it together in the plan. They present it. So,
Let me ask you a question in that regard. Would Denise, how would you, and Julie, how would you feel about if we were to motion to dissolve the committee as it exists and is defined in the write-up, and that for next month's board meeting, we would have a draft of the task force, in essence, to keep what you envision alive, Denise, but so that it's phrased differently, and that you and Julie could work out a draft to present back to the board on that.
I'm perfectly fine with that.
Okay.
yeah, I also think, the description is pretty spot on. It talks about how they're doing village emergency planning activities. I think really all you need to do is just change the name of it from a committee to a task force, and I think we've got it.
Okay. So then do we have consensus that we'll let Julie work on revising that for presentation next month? Sounds like we do. So then as part of that, should we just then motion to dissolve the current one at that time, Julie, and do it all in
Yes.
one fell swoop? Okay, excellent. Okay, do we have any trustee questions on the recommendation from the admin committee on the Friends of Pebble Beach committee?
Not for me.
Got nothing.
Okay, I will motion that we dissolve the Friends of Pebble Beach committee as it currently exists and encourage a non-governmental friends group to replace it.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Do we have any questions from trustees on the admin committee recommendation for the Marina Fest committee?
I make a motion to dissolve.
Second.
Okay, and all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. So that'll be,
Oh,
that's dissolved as of January 2024 as written in the write-up.
Okay.
So there's one more year left of Marina Fest committee with village involvement. Okay. Do we have any questions from trustees on the recommendation from the admin committee to dissolve the youth center board?
Motion to dissolve.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Do we have any questions from trustees on the recommendation to move forward with the creation of the ad hoc village hall planning committee as detailed in the packet?
Well,
Nothing.
creation or removal and then create a new one.
Yeah, you're correct, Don. So yes. So allow me to better clarify that. Do we have any questions from trustees related to the need to dissolve the old Village Hall Planning Committee that's been on the books and to create a resolution draft for November regarding the institution of a new Village Hall Committee? Any questions regarding either of those two issues?
No.
Okay, so then to handle the first part of it, I will motion that we dissolve the current standing ad hoc Village Hall Planning Committee.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. And then I will motion that we draft a resolution to create the new Village Hall Committee for the board to review at the November meeting.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, everybody. And Don, thank you for jumping in with your point about speeding things along in the manner.
No, it's all right. I just get tired about this time at night.
That's all right.
Yeah, we'll do it.
Yeah, I understood. Thank you. Glad you did it. Moving on to item 11K, salaries for boards and committees. Julie, can you summarize where we're at, please?
Sure. Whenever we have a new board coming on, we have to set the salary for that new board. So we have been including that salary in our bylaws, but that's incorrect. We're supposed to do it by ordinance. So what we need to do is adopt an ordinance at our next meeting, which says what the salaries will be for those new terms. You know, it looks at terms of new board members, committees, etc., as you can see in the staff report. So what I've done here is I've just taken what you currently have proposed and what you currently pay your existing current board members, and I put that in the staff report saying, here's the starting point. This is what your current people are being paid. Do you want to make any changes for the new people that are coming on? So after our discussion, any changes you make, we will come back with this in an ordinance format at our next meeting. It does have to be adopted at the next meeting unless we have a special meeting thereafter, because it has to be adopted before people take out their election papers.
Okay.
Question on this. I thought we were paying the plan commission chair more. I think that was a discussion we had last year. I thought that there was supposed to be, what was it, like 3,000 or 5,000, something like that. I know it was more than a standard trustee, less than the president.
I remember we had that conversation, but I don't think it ever went anywhere, Nate.
I think it would be appropriate if we did that.
I think I agree with Nate. I believe it would be appropriate to set such a number for the plan commission chair. I would also just mention, in my opinion, to my fellow trustees, in my opinion, particularly after having gone through substantive support from staff on raises for staff, in effect, taking into account current state of affairs and economy, inflation, et cetera. I think in addition to putting into place that salary for the plan commission chair, that it would be appropriate to consider some sort of a bump up for all trustees serving on the board.
I was thinking currently the $100 a month that the trustees get, and 402 pages of a packet, and parks that I'm on usually is a pretty hefty packet, etc. There's just so much more time, and it's been going on for a long time. It's not like this is something new. I think it would be appropriate to bring it up to 150 a month, 1,800 a year. It's not a lot, but it's something.
And then are you envisioning an increase just for base trustees and not for the president position, Denise?
Yeah, that was the only proposal that I was gonna make tonight. Yes.
Okay,
It's 1,200 to, I'm sorry, Denise, 1,200 to 1,500,
1,800,
1,800. Okay,
a $50 a month bump.
got it. Okay.
But I don't hear anybody else saying they think that's a good idea or a bad idea.
I think
And
it's a good idea.
Everybody keep in mind, this is not for you. It's for the new terms if you get reelected.
We'll be in a place where half of us make more money than the other half.
Correct.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's the way it goes. Yeah.
I guess I'm coming back to the plan commission chair, and I think that 4,800 a year would be appropriate. I think it is just a little bit less than the president, but there's a lot of obligations on there. And that would be in lieu of the 1,800 for the trustee. It wouldn't be in addition to that, or we could have it set to be in addition and then have it be, you know, what, 3,600.
Well, is it ever conceivable that a plan commission chair would not be a trustee?
I think they have to by statute.
Okay, so then I would say, I would say, salary compensation of 6,000 for the village president, 1,800 for all other trustees except the plan commission chair of 3,600. Right, or of 4,800, Nate?
4,800, I think.
Yeah, okay. So I would say salary compensation of 6,000 for the village president and 1,200 for all other trustees, with the exception of the plan commission chair, whose total compensation would be 4,800.
Mhm.
No. No.
36. Right?
I thought Nate said 4,800.
I'm saying 4,800 total, so it'd be 36, depending on how you, let's just say 4,800 total. Let's not, we'll make it muddier if we put it the other way.
It's
Okay.
the president is 6,000, the PC chair is 4,800, and all other trustees are 1,800.
Yep, sounds good. Okay.
All right.
What about meetings? How do we have any discussion or sentiments on bumping up meeting rates?
I think with the other increases, I felt okay with, I mean, it depends on what committee you're on. There are some committees that you are in and out of there, and it's appropriate. And then there are the ridiculous parks meetings that we have that are 3.5 hours. That just has to stop, in my opinion.
Yeah.
We have to shorten the meetings.
yeah.
We have to be more clear and more concise and more on task and get in and get out for the sake of people's time.
Denise, you know who I think about when I see those numbers is, I think about the non-trustee plan commission members. Because they're not getting that monthly, but it is, the plan commission meeting is as much or more of a commitment in time than the village board is. I wouldn't be opposed to simply stating that the plan commission, the citizen members get paid $100 a meeting. It's not something we're filling out, and I think it's rather a thankless job, so.
I am all in favor of that.
In my opinion, summarizing both Nate's and Denise's last comments, the potential, if not the assurity from time to time, that the matters at hand for both the board and the plan commission mean those are going to be extensively long meetings. And in the spirit of fairness, I would support raising the meeting attendance for village board meetings and plan commission meetings to $100, regardless of whether you're a trustee or a citizen.
That's gonna get those people that I'm talking about impacted, so I can agree to that.
I can agree to that. And I think as long as we're talking about that. I think it's later on down there. And I mentioned it to Julie today, that zoning board of appeals, they don't meet very often, but they are required to read a lot of information for one particular meeting, digest it, look through the code, do their research or whatever. So if we are bumping the board and plan commission up to $100, I also think that the zoning board of appeals should be $100. It
I'm
is,
fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Great point, Denise. I agree.
I mean, I'm not opposed to any of this because obviously we're voting for a future state, which means whoever else is in these seats will take advantage of these changes. Could be some of us, maybe it won't be, but otherwise it feels strange talking about this as you would all expect. It's, I mean, none of us have ever had jobs where we gave ourselves raises. However, is there any way to calculate what the total cost of some of these changes would be? If we would say, okay, we should pay the planning citizens $100, and then we'll do this meeting $100. It doesn't sound like that much money unless there's, you know, six citizens on planning, and we, you know, they meet several times. I mean, it adds up in a hurry. I honestly just don't know how much we're talking about right now.
my
No idea.
guess, Don, would be under $10,000 total. My
All right.
guess, but Tasha chimed in, so maybe I should let her speak.
I can't give you that number off the top of my head, but I could certainly calculate it for you by the next meeting.
Yeah, but yeah, if Denise is correct, and she probably is, that it's less than 10,000, we're not talking a really significant number, but sometimes just throwing numbers out there like that gets me a little nervous until you add it all up.
No, it's not a significant number.
I think it's $2,400
Yeah.
for the plan commission.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. All right.
Okay,
I think.
so do you want what do you want from us, Julie, here?
A motion to act, or it could even be by consensus, to bring an ordinance forward at the next board meeting reflecting these changes.
Okay, I think we've got consensus on that.
Yep.
Or I shouldn't say changes, I should say compensation
Revisions.
for the new term.
Okay, excellent. Okay, we'll look forward to seeing that come forward in ordinance draft. Thank you. Moving along to 11L, the draft of committee bylaws. Do we have any questions from trustees or discussion related to any of the admin committee's drafts for the committee bylaws?
I had questioned Julie, and I guess I'd liked the rest of the board to chime in pertaining to parks, property, and streets. Currently, we have 3 trustees and a citizen member. As we just notated earlier, Sharon Dorshane will no longer be on that for moving. And so the proposal is, and I believe it's for quorum issues, because we have had quorum issues. When you have 4, you need 3 people. I just thought a Parks, Property, and Streets Committee with 3 trustees and 2 residents just might be overkill. And
This was brought forth by Chad at the public meeting, to my recollection, and
Yes.
he was very concise and swayed unanimous support for his opinion at that meeting.
okay,
that
the one I wasn't at, then I'll let it go.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And then on page 306, under Plan Commission, just a couple of typos. on the third sentence that starts with Village of Sister Bay, which is statutory shall, and shall is crossed off, but shall needs to be put back in, consist of 7 members. Because it can't read the Plan Commission consists of 7 members.
Correct.
And then if you go down farther, the chair shall be the village president or their, not his or her, because we were, I think, getting rid of a lot of that and putting their designee from its membership should be inserted. And then continuing on, the village board has determined that residents or the citizen, that residents who serve in the are entitled. Oh, never mind.
Okay.
I thought there was another typo, but it's not.
Okay.
So just putting the shall and changing there.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other discussion or questions?
I had one.
Tasha?
You know, at a previous finance/personnel committee meeting, we briefly discussed combining the 2 committees. Wasn't addressed again, but I didn't know if you guys wanted to think about that as an option, since they often go hand in hand.
My own personal opinion is, I've been fine with combining the meetings when staff deems it appropriate, and I've never objected to a pattern of staff deeming it appropriate over consecutive months to combine them, but I don't think we should limit ourselves to having to have both committees meet. I think it's quite possible that a finance issue could come up with a timeliness that needs a meeting that should not require somebody from personnel. And I think it's entirely possible that a personnel issue could come up that's timely, that does not require the finance committee, and we shouldn't restrict ourselves. It seems to me the current handling suffices, that when staff deems necessary to combine the meetings, we do.
Do you have a pitch that you want to make to us for doing that, Tasha?
Well, the discussion at the finance level was that they're the same people. It's the same 3 people on both committees. And
that might not always be the
two
case.
committees. The finance personnel committee would just address all finance or personnel issues. So if you have a finance issue, it would be addressed by the finance personnel committee. It would just reduce the number of committees that we have out there. That's all.
That I agree with that it would reduce, but I would say that right now they're the same committee members. I understand that, but it could be in the future that doesn't occur. But it also there might absolutely be need for keeping them separate, just because there could be a personnel issue that just could be best handled just by the personnel committee if it's made up of different people in the future.
Yeah, I don't really have an opinion one way or another. It was just brought up. So
I would say there's a lot of
the
committees
appropriate
that
forum
might,
to discuss
there's other committees that might be even further looked at for eliminating or even combining, but I think personnel finance they both stand on their own, I think, even though they're combined today in function, but I think they both stand on their own.
Sounds good.
Any other questions or discussion related to the recommended changes to committee bylaws? Do we want a motion here to affect all changes as noted? Julie, am I correct to say we do not need to come back with a resolution on this?
That is correct. I do want to make everybody know that this is slated to become effective January 1st. So it wouldn't be immediate, and it's drafted that way because these currently have that original language about the compensation. So we have to wait until that ordinance is how do I describe this? So until that ordinance is adopted, this is still valid in its old format. And then we're going to adopt that ordinance, and then these new bylaws will become effective on January 1st. So we're good to adopt them with a simple motion. And then, but just keep in mind, you're stuck with the old stuff until January 1st.
So I will motion that we approve the revised committee bylaws effective January 1st, 2023, as noted in the packet.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 11M. Draft of the board bylaws that starts on page 310 of the packet. Do we have any questions or discussion from trustees on the administrative committee's edits and recommendations for the final set of trustee bylaws? Hearing none, I will motion that we accept the final set of bylaws, and that for this, there'll be a resolution at the next meeting, correct, Julie?
I don't think so.
It says here, if the edits are acceptable, a final set of bylaws will be presented for adoption at the next meeting.
Yeah, no, we're good then. That's what we'll do. I'm
So-
sorry, I'm getting,
So I will motion that we accept the draft of the bylaws to be presented for adoption at the next meeting. Do we have a second?
I'll
Second.
second it.
Second by Baker. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
and just a comment that will reflect any changes we made to the committees when we looked at those committee bylaws.
Right.
Correct.
Okay. All right, item number 11O, or excuse me, 11N. Accept the grant from the Wisconsin Elections Commission. This is noted on page 321 of the packet. Julie?
All right, so you've heard before that this was coming, but when we receive a grant, we as staff can't just say, yeah, we're taking it and committing the village to something. You as a board have to formally accept these grants, because you're usually with a grant, you're committing us to certain things. So like any other grant, just motion to accept the money. It's self-explanatory. Assuming you want the money.
Denise?
Just a question, if Heidi is still with us, she spent a little over $900 on security. Can you just clue me in onto what that is?
So at the fire station, I now have a closet with a locked door for me to store the tabulator for elections. In the past, it's always been stored in the fire clerk's office that week leading up to the election. But inevitably, every time I would go to the fire station to check on it, the door is left hanging wide open. So I have my own closet now.
And Heidi, isn't it required by law that that be locked up?
It has to be kept secured, yes.
Okay,
I make a motion to accept.
Second.
all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 11O, a review of the financial statements and monthly bills, pages 322 to 331 of our packet. Any discussion or questions for Tasha?
Tasha, page 323, Action Electric for $5.25.26. That should not be paid by us. It should be paid by the Vintage Boat Committee. Mr. Blossom, when he came in at the last minute, did a lot of changes this year. He said he would pay for all that.
Hey, Heidi, you are responding to that. I can hear you, so.
Oops, sorry. That bill came to us via the Marina Fest committee. I don't know if the committee wants to address it with Mr. Blossom present.
Okay, then we will do that. All right. I know Chris is opposed to this also.
I have a question on the same page, Tasha. Marina membership fees lien out $300. What is that?
It's probably one of his organization dues
Yeah.
that he pays.
Yeah, that would be an organization due for, and related to the Advanced Marina Management Program.
So,
He is working on becoming a certified marina manager. They've already sent him to half of the schooling.
okay,
and Part of the organization dues.
okay, now I understand. Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Tasha?
Tasha, page 324, 20455, Sheriff's Security for $132. Was that for something like Marina Fest or something? That's
No, that
all.
one wasn't specifically for Marina Fest. We have contracted with Sheriff Security Services to provide a couple of extra deputies on
Correct.
various random weekends when we are busy in the summer.
Yeah, I make that schedule. So this covered what time frame? Do you know?
Which one, the 132 or the 275?
Either one.
So the 275 was related specifically to Marina Fest.
Okay.
And then the 132, I believe, was the following weekend.
Okay.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I will motion that we approve for payment the monthly bills in the total amount of $551,413.22 as noted in our packet.
Rob, is that accepting that one that Scott mentioned for that somebody else was gonna pay? Mr. Blossom?
Are they going to reimburse us or are we going to hold off paying the bill?
The bill is already paid, so we could seek reimbursement.
All right, never mind then.
Okay, so we can pay the bills as noted and then
Correct.
seek reimbursement offline. Correct? Okay,
Correct.
so that's my motion.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
One quick comment, Rob, before we move
Yes,
on.
Denise.
Tasha, when is our going garbage contract up?
The top of my head, I don't know.
Okay.
Okay. Moving on to 11P. The Stony Ridge Pond, approve use of TIF funds to complete the pond. This was part of our amended agenda this evening. Julie?
All right, not sure if Dan is still on here or not, but as you know, we're completing the pond out in the subdivision and we ran into a problem. They hit rock, which means we now have to line it with clay. That was not budgeted. We don't have a choice. We have to line it with clay. Like I said, it was not budgeted. Dan has done an extensive amount of work on this. He can chime in on here. But we need to do something. So, you know, the thought is use the TIF funds to pay for the clay liner. That's what TIF funds are for. But as staff, we just can't do that. We need a board approval. Dan, do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah,
I mean, it's been
just
your baby.
the liner is a DNR requirement. We have already submitted to register the pond as a Sister Bay regional pond. It's for lack of a better word, it's just really not an option. We have to complete it. We have to add the liner, blast it to the appropriate level. It's just part of the project to make it an acceptable village pond.
Denise?
in Julie's or somebody's report that was sent out separately, it said that when we took ownership of that, we never were going to special assess anybody. And I brought it up a few months ago or something, and especially now with this increase, that pond and all the people that it is serving, can we still not go back and special assess them, especially now for this additional money?
So I'm not sure if Tasha is still there or not. Tasha, I believe we'd have to go out and do an assessment of the properties. Is that correct?
Yes.
So we could, there's a process involved. We have to hire someone to do an actual assessment of all the properties, correct, Tasha?
Yes.
We can't just use their tax assessment.
We would have to work with our assessor to complete the special assessment process, but the concern with especially assessing these properties is you have village-owned lands, you have now those who are owned by that will be owned by the Door County Land Trust or the whatever housing trust. You would be assessing Marissa. Really, this should have been taken care of with Keith Garrett's project. It was not taken care of, and the village assumed that responsibility.
Is it, can I rephrase that, Tasha?
Yeah.
Are you trying to say with all the nonprofit tax-free property out there now, the burden of this is going to fall on the for-profit or private parties?
Yes.
Okay. So about half the people are going to bear the burden for everyone.
Something like that.
Denise?
Fair?
So I know okay, so this is the 250,000 is just for the clay liner. Of course, we're going to approve it. Of course, we have to finish it. I don't know what the total cost is for the entire pond. Does somebody have that answer?
Dan?
I can break that out for you. I mean, you've got the road costs in. I would have to go down an itemized list. I can't give you that offhand.
I mean, is it $50,000 that we were anticipating, or 100,000 until we had to put in the clay? I mean, just a ballpark is.
I would say probably about 180.
Okay.
Right.
So
$500,000.
if you're saying that because of the nonprofits and in the village-owned property, that the tax burden would fall to the other individuals, but what if we don't assess them for the entire amount? I mean, you're talking about roughly $430,000. What if we just do part of it or half of it? Or the 180 that we thought it was going to cost, but we'll do the 250 for the clay and not special assess them for that? Is there some halfway point because of the nonprofits and the village lots that would be more reasonable?
I think we have to check that out to see, what the legal side of that is, Denise, but we could certainly report back at that at the next meeting. I think
Okay.
that's a really good question. We have to see what legally we can do.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we have consensus that do we need a motion to table this, or is consensus sufficient, Julie?
Well, we don't want to table it. We want to approve it, because if we table this, if we table it, we're not going to be able to get the clay in this season. I
Okay.
think what Denise was saying was, let's go ahead and approve this, but in the meantime, let's research this to see if there's a way to recoup our costs.
Okay,
Fair enough, Denise, was that right?
Perfect.
I think a better way to phrase it is to lose less money.
Thank you.
Okay, can I bring up a point?
Please,
Uh,
Council.
This property and all of this project is in a TIF which is generating money and which has the cash available to do this. So is the responsible thing to assess those taxpayers additional funds when the village has the funds to complete the work?
I think it's appropriate to use
The
the TIF
listed
funds.
TIF project.
I think it's appropriate to use the TIF funds. Period.
We have the money.
So use the
I disagree. I disagree. I think if we can get something from them, because Garrett screwed up and went bankrupt, and God help me if I ever lay eyes on him again. I understand the point. It's a really good point, Tasha. But that's money that we could put towards something else also. And maybe we can't do it legally. Maybe it would cost us a whole lot of money to get part of it back. Maybe it's bad PR. I don't know.
I think we explore it and we can make a decision after we have the answer to these basic questions.
So I'm confused as to how we would approve using TIF funds, but be exploring not using TIF funds.
So I think you're gonna make a motion to pay for the clay liner with TIF funds and research the possibility of assessing prop for improvements that have already been made in a TIF.
And we just don't know that answer yet. So I'll make that motion that we approve $250,000 for a clay liner to be taken out of TIF funds.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
So Denise, no research on the assessment?
I didn't know that had to be part of a motion. I figured that was just kind of
Okay.
general consensus to have
Yep,
staff.
That's fine, as long as we're clear on it. That's all.
Okay.
Yeah, there's consensus for staff to research. Okay, speaking of staff, item number 12, staff reports. Do we have any trustees with any questions or discussion related to staff reports? Staff, so that you don't feel shortchanged. Is there anything in particular of merit that you feel needs further enunciation?
I have something. It's not in my staff report, but I think that if trustees get a chance to run over to the Parks Department or say something to those guys, they should give them a big kudos for the work they did this weekend. Nate, I know that you were out meeting and greeting people. I think Chad might have sent over some curds or something, but you know, they got rained on, they got beat up pretty bad. They were pretty tired. They did a great job. I'm not sure if you saw what they did, but they actually dressed up as Vikings and rode in the boat this year in the parade to try and make it a little more festive. So just for employee morale, make them feel appreciated. They did a lot of work.
Julie did that. Who was that I said something to? I didn't recognize, but I wanted to say something.
Mason Hoovelman.
Okay,
Yeah.
it made a difference to him.
You mentioned it. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Denise?
Just a question on page 332. Under wage study, the second paragraph, that's basically just two sentences. The second sentence is, be advised, these are still typically accompanied by a COLA. And we talked about a COLA is still just a guideline. So I was wondering if that second sentence is still appropriate.
Well, I think, you know, when we do that step thing, I think we need people to understand that you still could be eligible for a COLA in here. It's not guaranteed, it's not granted, but it's not that we have a wage study and that's it. Sometimes and typically they are accompanied by a COLA, whether it's 2%, 3%. There's nothing guaranteed. Of course, this is just my staff report, but I think we understand from tonight that a COLA is never guaranteed.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Any other questions on staff reports, trustees? Thank you, staff. Much appreciated. Item number 13 this evening, committee appointments. We have one candidate to discuss for Plan Commission. Patrice Champeau has stepped forward as being interested in becoming a member of the Plan Commission. Patrice Champeau was born and raised in Sister Bay, is still a local in Sister Bay. For those of you who are not aware, for 20 plus years, she has been the manager of guest services at White Gull Inn. And I offer Patrice Champeau to the board for discussion. Denise?
As Plan Commission Chair, I do recommend Patrice. I'm very happy to have a born and raised person volunteer for a very important committee who definitely will bring a different perspective. We had made the announcement when we were talking about all the Village Hall controversy, and she heeded that call, and so I'm very pleased about that.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 14 this evening, committee reports. Administrative Committee met and worked on everything we discussed earlier this evening. Communications Technology Committee.
As we discussed, has not met.
That was just, and we just eliminated it.
Yeah.
Coastal Byways. Mary is not with us this evening. Moving along, Door County Economic Development Corporation.
That's Mary.
That's Mary as well. Emergency Management Plan Committee, we know all about that from earlier in the evening. Finance Committee, Denise.
Does anybody have any questions? We'll be talking about the budget momentarily.
Hearing none, we'll move ahead to Scott, Fire Board.
Has not met.
Okay. Ad hoc Green Tier Legacy Community Committee meets on October 24th. Unless we do not have a quorum, then we'll be picking a new date. We also have a scheduled meeting November 28th.
And they got their magnets done, so.
Yes, if you want a refrigerator magnet for recycling tidbit information, stop by and grab one at the office. Historical Society, Scott.
Meeting earlier this month. Museum was closed on the 7th of October. The last farm market was on the 8th. Bob Jiske has been voted in as the new vice president, taking the place of John Fletcher, who passed away. John Nelson, who's on our board, his daughter was married in the Kessel Barn. Went very well. He made a suggestion that perhaps we should consider small events in the barn. Phase 2 of fundraising for the barn has begun. We were able to pay the movers in full for the move from Little Sister Bay. And they are paid in full, $69,000 we had raised for that. So that's taken care of.
Excellent. Thank you, Scott. Ad hoc Land Acquisition Oversight Committee, Chad is not with us this evening. Library Commission, Mary is not with us. Marina Committee, Scott,
I covered that last month, so
we're clear. Yep,
we're clear, and Marina Fest, next month.
yep, November postmortem
Yep.
on the fest. Okay, Ad hoc Outdoor Rec and Transportation, Nate.
We had a meeting last week and went over an outline of where we want to connect some trails and put some infrastructure in, and Dan did a good job putting that together, and I think he's gonna do a little bit more with that, and we should have something to bring back to share, I would think soon.
Thank you. Parks, Properties and Streets, September 21st meeting minutes were in the packet. Our next meeting is November 11th. That's our walking meeting of the Village Parklands. Personnel Committee, we have been working on what was detailed in the staff report, wage study, et cetera. Plan Commission, Denise, anything of merit to note?
Well, Mike, I can't, something just happened to my whole screen. It's just all white. There's no words, no anything, no pages. So I can't remember what was in there. I'm sorry.
Okay. That's all right. We'll move ahead. SBAA meets on Thursday. Tourism Zone Commission, the full commission meets on Thursday as well. Sewer and Water Utility Committee, October was canceled. We meet on November 8th. Youth Center has not met. Do we have a motion to approve the committee reports?
I'll make it.
I'll second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carried. Item number 15, matters to be placed on a future agenda or referred to a committee, official, or employee not previously noted this evening. Hearing none. At 8:57 PM, I will motion that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carried. Thank you, everybody.
Denise, you're staying on?
Yes.